Welcome back to our Pokemon Draft League analysis where we discuss popular Pokemon in the format. So in this episode we'll be discussing regular Kyurem. So in terms of regular Kyurem, just like its other forms, or its other two other forms, regular Kyurem has pretty much the same typing with Dragon Ice. So from from a defensive standpoint, Kyurem isn't as potent as you would think from just like typing wise, given that it's weak to some of the most common offensive types in the format, with fighting, rock, even fairy. And then you have also dragon and steel, which uncommon but are rather problematic when for Kyurem, so to deal with. Resistance wise, it can actually deal with water, grass, and electric types rather well, so at least it has that going for itself. So in terms of base stats and ability, this is where Kyurem kind of differentiates from the other two. However, unlike most third event legendaries, like Kyurem actually has a very high, or respectively high base stat total in 660. So, and all of its stats are above base 90, at least. So, from an offensive standpoint, it has 130 in its both attack and special attack, which is pretty amazing if you ask me. Kyurem can actually be like a great special attacker and attacker. So, and it's even if the HP total is relatively high, it's 125, which kind of like makes it somewhat like nearly as bulky as some of the other Pixie Pokemon with base 100 across the board. It's just that this thing's more offensive. And lastly, its base 95 speed is really it's usable, but given how the speed have like been speed tiers have been like raised since like Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, and Sun and Moon in general, like Kyurem's like kind of like slowly lacking behind, but still usable given how like most of the other like Pokemon are below that tier. So that's really nice to have. So in terms of ability, one might think it's a relatively bad, but I'd say with pressure, since it's just like, oh, you're just losing an extra power point or of an attack every time you use it, so on against Kyurem. But with Kyurem's defenses, it's probably one of the best pressure stall users in the form in the in any singles formats since it could just pretty much stall out, but thanks to its bulk, it could pretty much stall out someone like, let's say, like Scald or like a Thunderbolt. So with its BST, obviously they're not going to target the Pokemon with Pokemon's not going to target Kyurem down with that, but it's pretty much an option since Kyurem can really be like a relatively difficult to take down with its like high like base stat totals. So yeah. So the question comes, why draft Kyurem? So pretty much while it's underlooked by its other form, basically, Kyurem Black, regular Kyurem has as much potential with like the high like stat distribution and its offensive Dragon Ice typing. So basically speaking, Kyurem can just be just as good as its other form, Kyurem Black, which is arguably slightly better because of its ability and its access to Turbo. Not Turbo, but it's Fusion Bolt, which hits electric types. And it's usable high 170 attack stat. Regular Kyurem is still just as potent with like 130 attack stats, which is pretty much really amazing if you ask me. And then like as I mentioned, 125 HP and 90 defense is nothing to laugh at as well. And it has access to recovery, so. And not to mention, it has a very usable move pool for like both offensive and defensive sets. And I think what really makes Kyurem stand out is like it's a great mid-tier value draft Pokemon, since it's like normally you don't see Kyurem like used a lot in singles, but I think in Draft League it's pretty much where it shines the most, since people take note of like Pokemon to draft or Pokemon to use, and then you'll say like Kyurem, and then like with its offensive stats, and they're like, yeah, this could fit my team. So yeah. In terms of like moves you like use with Kyurem. Some of the popular options include, but are not limited to, special attacks like Ice Beam, Draco Meteor, Earth Power, Focus Blast, Hidden Power. Like, notably, Ice Beam and Earth Power alone give you like neutral coverage to hit like water, like everything but bar water bug type Pokemon. So you can just smack that with a Draco Meteor. And also, you can't hit Shedinja for some damn reason. But then again, you could just Toxic it. Even then, like, regarding its defensive sets, like, you have access to Roost, which makes really use of its high defense and HP total, so... Then you have access to Toxic to wear down stuff. And then Psychic, just for fighting types, Dragon Pulse, just so that you don't lose special attack. And Blizzard, it's pretty much a stronger Ice Beam, but it's inaccurate. But there's a set to it, as we'll get to. For other viable options, you have Outrage, Flash Cannon, Shadow Ball, Iron Head, and Stone Edge. 3 of those moves are notable for, like, let's say, a physical Kyurem. Then you have screens with Reflect Light Screens for pretty much support, as well as Dragon Tail. I did list it with Protect because it works very well with like a pressure stalled Kyurem, as we'll see. So, and Noble Roar, is pretty much a new move that it got in Sun Ultra Moon, which it lowers the the opponent's attack and special attack by 1. So it's kind of interesting for a Pokemon like that if you're gonna go with a stalling route. And lastly, Z-Hail, which we'll talk about later. So, in terms of notable item choices, you see like Icy Z, Dragonium Z, and Groundium Z sometimes. It depends on the coverage really, so but more often than not you're gonna see Icium and Dragonium for its stabs. Since Z Ice Beam or Z Blizzard is just like pretty much an ice nuke that could just hit something that's super effective or just ensure like a no kill. Even like something like, given what it's a base 130 special attack, you're more likely gonna kill something, so or to almost weaken something down. So yeah. In terms of items, you might see Life Orb and Extra Belt used on Kyurem the most, as well as like other choice items like Specs and Scarf. You could also see like a Choice Band set or even like a Choi or Assault Vest if you want to increase the special defense. So I would advise against it because you don't have access to Roost. You might as well just put like a bunch of... You might as well just run especially defensive Kyurem on its end, so... And then you can also run super effective reducing berries like Chople, Chardy, Barberry, Roselli, and Habanberry, which reduce like the super effectiveness of fighting Rock, Steel, Fairy, and Dragon type Pokemon each. And lastly, for recovery items, you have access to leftovers and 50% berries, so that could just give it recovery, gradual recovery, or just immediate that's infinite with leftovers, or something that's a little more immediate in case something like in case Kyurem needs like to replenish itself immediately if it gets below like 25%. So yeah. So in terms of sets, Kyurem has like access to many sets. So as we'll discuss, like first we'll talk about the offensive sets and the form of the Life Orb. Now, Life Orb is pretty much self-explanatory. Like, it makes use of Kyurem's attacks, increases them by, I think, 30%, but at the cost of its 10% HP, which isn't that bad when you have access to Roost. So, like, you could just replenish that. So, HP value here is just to reduce Life Orb damage. Ice and Ground type coverage hits most Pokemon for neutral damage. Stab, Draco Meteor for power and wall breaking. So pretty much like as I mentioned earlier, like Ice Beam and Earth Power are really good like coverage options in of themselves. So it's really nice to have. And for the second set, it's pretty much like 3, 2 in 1 because like it largely depends on what you're running on Kyurem, whether it be like Choice Scarf or Choice Specs, or like, you know, a Revenge Killer or like a Wall Breaker, as well as whether you're gonna run Timid or Modest. Ice Beam, Earth Power are usually like the go-to moves here on Kyurem, like you might want to spam Ice Beam and then like Earth Power for steals, fire, poison types, and rock types, and Ice Beam for like flying, dragon, grass. I know I'm forgetting one, but yeah, in general. So, and ground. So, in terms of coverage, like you would most likely see Draco Meteor on Kyurem, but you might also see Dragon Pulse just so that you don't lose out the special attack. So that's another thing. In case like the opponent's very weak to Dragon, you could just run Draco Meteor. I mean not Draco Meteor, but like Dragon Pulse, so that you just keep attacking. But it's usually seen on like choice spec sets. Still, Starfers can often have it. So, Flash Cannon is more often for fairies. Psychic is for I would say fighting types and poisons. And last but not least, Focus Blast for potentially rock, steel, and a normal type Pokemon. Though it's a high risk, high reward move. So yeah. Second set we're talking about are the Z move options. As Kyurem is pretty much like a great user for Z moves given its base stat total. So its first set is pretty much like almost similar to the other set. It's just that you have access to Dragonium or ICMC. But either Z Ice Beam or Z Draco Meteor. So Z Ice Beam pretty much ensures a knockout on like super effective targets. Let's say if you want to hit something like a Dragonite, it pretty much with multi skill like hit with it, like unless it doesn't have like any large like special like attack investment, you're likely gonna kill that Dragonite through multi skill with a Z Ice Beam. And then lastly, C Draco Meteor is just like a massive base 195 power, like without stab. I'm not sure exactly the effect with stab, but the point is that you don't suffer the special attack reduction, which is amazing. So then you have the other set, which is Z Hail, which boosts the power of well, not power, but like its speed by 1 and sets of hail. And this is pretty much a great setup option, so it could like allow Kyurem to be like +1 speed, and you could just spam Blizzard. Though at a limited time, so you could make use of like replacing Roost for like something important, like let's say let's say like Draco Meteor or like Flash Cannon for fairy types, or even like Hidden Power for like steals. So yeah, in case you need like sort of like a sweeping Kyurem set. So for the third options are mostly based on defensive sets revolving around Substitute. So the first one's Subtoxic. This Kyurem is kind of interesting because you can either run Leftovers, which helps its recovery option, or something like an Apapa Berry, which gives it additional recovery. If it's like if it gets really low, it could just recover up immediately. So the first set we're talking about is the Subtoxic set, which pretty much you have Ice Beam, Substitute, Toxic, and Roost. So the HP value ensures that like it is broken by, let's say, Seismic Toss or Nightshade. So and with Toxic, with Toxic, you're able to spread like you can slowly wear down the opposing team relatively well. So it also ensures that with Substitute, it also ensures that like Kyurem isn't status by opposing Toxic set, and that you can just freely do whatever you need to do. So yeah. And last but not least, this ability its ability pressure pairs very well with Substitute, with the Subtoxic set, because you're pretty much stalling out moves like Scald, Thunderbolt. They're gonna have a hard time like breaking Kyurem. Like I mentioned, like you could also, or as I forgot to mention, like you could also tailor this Kyurem to be more specially defensive or defensive if you need it. So that way you can ensure you like take, let's say, multiple like special attacks, and then you could still, and you force the opponent to you could just PP style, like let's say like Overheat, or even like Thunderbolt or Ice Scald, so that way they can't break you, and while you're just toxicing them and just spamming Ice Beam and all. So yeah, the second set's pretty much more of an offensive set for Kyurem, which makes use of Leftovers, Life Orb, but you could also put Leftovers in case you want to gradual recovery. Life Orb is for the boost, while Leftovers are for slight replenishments. And then this time you put Earth Power, so that way you're not walled by like Steel, Fire, Water type Pokemon. It can also be adjusted for power and bulk. So yeah, the last sets I want to talk about are some of my favorites, like Metronome and the mixed Wall Breaker. So with the Metronome, okay, Metronome Kyurem, it might sound very weird at first, but it pretty much abuses the set potential of of its near perfect coverage of Ice Beam and Earth Power. As I mentioned, the only thing that doesn't hit that very hard are like certain typings and levitate Pokemon. So like Rotom H and like Bronzong. But even then, you can just cover that. But for now, let's just talk about like the Metronome build, like our item. So what it does is that it boosts the power of an attack by 20% of its original base power by each succession hit, and it maxes out at like 100% or after 6 hits. So basically, your Ice Beam gets boosted by another 20% if you use it again and again and again and again until you max out like 6 times. So you're pretty much powering up Ice Beam to a point where it's stronger than a Choice Specs, which is ridiculous. Like, boost. So yeah, you're pretty much powering yourself up to like a Choice Specs or above. It could be really ridiculous, and it can help with breaking down walls that are like just spamming even let's say they're spamming, let's say, like Recover. So I forgot to mention this, but you could also put Toxic over Substitute in case you wanted to like makes use of like stalling Pokemon out with like and getting residual damage. Since Kyurem's not gonna die unless you have like a very strong super effective hit. So and of course you could also make use of its special defense. You could adjust the special defense of Kyurem, so that way you could just absorb as much special attacks as possible while you're just boosting up with the Metronome. Because Metronome boosted Ice Beams and our powers are just relatively scary to face from Kyurem. So as you'll see, it'll make up for the damage. So yeah. Lastly is pretty much a set I kind of ripped from one of the Nogon sets, and that is the Mixed Attacker Wall Breaker. So the point of the set is pretty much to lure out opposing fairy types and just make use of its offensive attack of 130. So like I said, while its attack stat might be limited, it still has good options with Iron Head and Outrage. So the goal of this set is pretty much to get something like a Chansey, lower something like a Chansey, or something that's very especially defensive, and then you just smack it with Outrage. So, or Iron Head if it's a fairy type. So you just use Life Orb, Ice Beam, just to for the opponent to see, hey, this might be one of those regular Kyurem sets, and then you just lure it out. So and just smash that Pokemon with either an Iron Head or an Ice Beam, Outrage, etc. So yeah. In terms of potential partners for Kyurem, mostly you want to have a Steel type, which pretty much help Kyurem with 4 of its weaknesses. I think the only exception is fighting, since it adds to it. But again, you could also add Fairy type Pokemon, which can take on Dragon and Fighting types. So, and also can form a really good Steel Dragon Fairy core. So if you guys or Fantasy core, since that could just help with its offensive and defensive potential. So yeah. So most Poke Water types also pair very well with Kyurem, really, because they have access to Scald, Ice Beam, and they're really defensive, and they can take on most fighting, Dragon, Rock, and Steel type Pokemon. I don't know if fairies, but a select few can. So, and then you also want to have Pokemon that are pivoting, that could pivot out to bad matchups in general. So, or have access to either U-turn or Volt Switch, even something like Parting Shot. So, and last but not least, you want to have hazard setters and hazard removals to remove hazard setters, basically to set, let's say, entry hazards like Stealth Rocks, Toxic Spikes, which really help Kyurem net Okos, or just deal damage overall, or just help Kyurem net Okos throughout the game. While you want to have has removal because Kyurem is vulnerable to all 3 forms of status, and also as well as sticky web. So since it's grounded and it's weak and it's an ice type, so yeah, rock is gonna be doing 25%, so it's gonna be like chipping or like reducing its longevity as well. So you want to have something for like entry hazards. Then again, any team in Draft League needs to have something for this. So yeah. So partners. For potential partners, defensive partners for steel types, you might see like entry hazard bonds and support bonds in general, like Celesteelos, Skarmory, Heatran, Ferrothorn, Bronzong, and Empoleon. Like Empoleon and Skarm deserve a special mention as they are also defoggers and entry hazards users. So Bronzong and Ferrothorn also like deserves a mention as they can set up hazards. So like Kyurem can really appreciate these mons, like switching in for those first weaknesses. Like some of them are weak to like fighting, but others are like Celesteela and Skarm aren't and can actually Oko them back. So yeah. Then you see pivot options like Mega Scizor and regular Scizor, Jirachi, Cobalion, Fortress, Magnezone, which all have access to either U-turn or Volt Switch, and you could just pivot out of Kyurem if they need to. So yeah. Then you have offensive Pokemon like Magearna. I think it also has a Volt Switch, but often you see it as an offensive threat. So Mega Mawile, like Escadrille, Kartana, Metagross, and Doublade. So these guys are mostly offensive mons. Especially like the last or the 5 of those mons. They have exceptionally high attack stats. Magearna is obviously a great special attacker as usual. So yeah. In terms of fairy type Pokemon, usually you want to have a defensive cleric for Kyurem because like they often have access to Heal Bell and Wish, and they could replenish Kyurem's HP or cure it of any status options it has. And then I also want to give a special mention to the last 4: Florges, Tapu Fini, Togekiss, and Klefki, which they have access to Defog as well. So yeah, and but I will mention that like Clefable and Sylveon are still respectively good in like Draft League, with like they have access to really fat wishes as well as Togekiss. So yeah, for offensive Pokemon, yeah, you often see Mega Diancie, Mega Gardevoir. Mega Gardevoir can also be built defensively, but often you might see offensive Gardevoir. So yeah, Mega Mawile, Azumarill, Mimikyu, and Primarina. Like also, we would like to mention that from an offensive standpoint, the last 3 in Azu, Mimikyu, and Primarina form a really great like offensive core with Kyurem. I think Water Fairy really helps deal with most of Kyurem's main weaknesses in general. So yeah. In terms of like hatcher support, I've listed a bunch of Pokemon here. Like it doesn't have to be exactly these Pokemon, but these are the mons I listed down as really that can just perform very well with Kyurem, since they often want a Pokemon that could also abuse their entry hazards. Like they need Pokemon that could support them. So in general, offensively. So for entry hazards, you see something like Clefable, Ferrothorn, Greninja, both the Nidos, Nihilego, Scolipede, Roserade, Toxapex, and Gophagus. Most of these have access to spikes, rocks, and toxic. Most notably Toxic Spikes, because Toxic Spikes is really what can help Kyurem like out, just especially with the defensive sets, since they can just wear them down. So hits targets down with its great defensive bulk and typing. So yeah. And then you have the other Pokemon like hazard removals that have access to Rapid Spin or Defog, but also have access to one form of hazard, like rocks, spikes, or T-Spikes. So like Landorus has access to rocks and Defog, Skarm, Defog, Stealth Rocks, and Spikes, Donphan, Rapid Spin, and Rocks, Mew, Rocks, and Defog, and so forth. Even Fortress has Spin and like all entry hazard support. So yeah, really, these guys can like perform very well for Kyurem, like in general. So in terms of water type partners, you often see like Pokemon such as like Starmie, Tapu Fini, Suicune, like even Slowbro and Alomomola, because these guys really help augment Kyurem's defenses value. and like support in general. Like Skarmory has access to Rapid Spin, Infinity, Defox as well. But it's their typing in general helps them out, Kyurem out. Suicune's another pressure stall user. Now it's slightly more like passive in a sense, but can really help Kyurem out in certain situations. And then Slowbro and Slowking, as well as Alamolo, have access to regen and can just take hits for Kyurem if it needs to, and and Alamolo in this case can wish up. So then you have the water, more bulkier more passive water types like the Toxapex, Tentacruel, Mantine. They really help Kyurem out, as well as Vaporeon and the Jellicent. Jellicent deserves a special mention as it can resist. Not only it resists no, it doesn't resist, but it's immune to fighting type Pokemon, so helps out Kyurem. So then you have more offensively based water types. We already touched on Azu and Primarina and also Green, since they have. But there's also other water types like Gyara, Keldeo, Manaphy, and even Araquanid that can help form an offensive core with Kyurem. So in terms of partners, like pivot Pokemon with access to U-Turn, Parting Shot, and Volt Switch are very good partners for Kyurem, since they could just allow it to switch in and out of good or favorable matchups in general. So yeah, so for the fast pivots, these are Pokemon that are going to be able to switch out first most of the time. Like Tapu Koko, Crobat, Thundurus, Infernape, Mega Beedrill. Other Pokemon listed here can also act as slow pivots like Zapdos, Celebi, and Jirachi. That's assuming if they're fully defensive as well and they don't have any speed. So, but generally speaking, you most likely have these Pokemon to pivot out, to Kyurem. It's just so they could have a favorable matchup. That's just immediately. So, however, there are some times where you want to have Kyurem not take any damage in general, or even aside maybe entry hazards. So you want to have some mons Mega Sizzle, Rotom, Mandibuzz, Silvally, Incineroar, Decidueye, Electros, Magnezone, Gligar, Fortress, Hypnol, Mesprit, even Electros, which all these can have access to slow pivoting options, and just getting Kyurem safely without taking damage. And they also have access to defog or hazard removal like Mega Sizzle, Rotom, Fortress, even some other ones in the top like Zapdos and Viscor. So yeah. In terms of other partners, you would see wall breakers like Mega Minicham, Hoopa, Reuniclus, Mega Gallade, Mega Gardevoir, Heracross, Victini, Darmanitan, Necrozma, Manaphy, Azumarill, and Mega Pinsir, since all of them have access to relatively high attack stats or set of options like Tailglow, Manaphy, Swords Dance, Mega Pinsir, and even mons like Hoopa who have insanely, and Mega Medicham that have insanely high attack stats. They just pair really well, and not to mention they have relatively nice speed. So in terms of revenge killers or fast cleaners, you generally want to have a Pokemon that's above base 100 or 110 usually. But here are some mons listed as examples like Mega Lopunny, Mega Alakazam, Mega Arrow, Tapu Koko, Greninja, Infernape, Kartana, I'm not making cover, regular Gengar, Bragion, and Thundurus. These are Pokemon that usually outspeed most of Kyurem's threats and just take it down relatively nicely. So yeah. So they don't have to be these Pokemon in general. They have to be at least Pokemon that are just above, let's say, base 95 or even recommended 110. But most of these Pokemon have access to things that just also priority. So you can also make use of priority users like Entei, Scizor. Yeah. So for checks and counters, despite most of Kyurem's redeeming qualities, it still suffers from a poor defensive typing and also now mediocre speed. So it's pretty much it's somewhat slow now compared to with the power creep in Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon. So Kyurem is pretty much, it can outspeed a good portion of the format, but it can't outspeed the other. So yeah. Usually fast dragon fighting rock types can easily beat Kyurem with their stab options, as well as steel and fairy types can occasionally wall Kyurem or beat it offensively. And then you have dedicated special walls that help most special sets. And entry hazards just beat Kyurem down, especially rocks. It's 25. It takes 25%. And again, anything faster than like 96 speed. I'm not saying 95 because you know speed tie is a thing. So Erica during Kyurem. So in terms of like like checks and counters, you might see like most of these are usually good counters for Kyurem and also are good checks to them offensively. So like Megalopony, Infernape, Medicham, Cobalion, and Minshao can kill their like the first 5 of the fighting types all outspeed Kyurem and can hit it with their stab fighting moves. And Keldor deserves a special mention since it could actually take a hit with like an assault vest and regain back with Rain Punch. So yeah. Then you have Pokemon like Terrakion, Mega Diancie, Nilego, Tyranitar, Lycanroc Dusk, and Gigalith. Like I'd say like 4 of these mons could like check Kyurem offensively, especially like Nilego and Terrakion and Mega Diancie. Tyranitar and Gigalith can actually switch in thanks to their like massive special defense, given with the Sandstream as well. And Lycanroc also has access to what do you call it? Silverrock, which pretty much can revenge kill like even Scarf Kyurem. So lastly, we have Dragon type Pokemon. Well, they're not really good like walls for Kyurem. They can serve as great offensive checks since they can use their stab, dragon typing just to like kill Kyurem. But keep in mind, Kyurem can be very bulky as well, so you might want to have some prior damage to them. So mons like Char-X, Hydreigon, Mega Lottie, or even regular Lotties can work, as well as Haxorus, Garchomp, and Salamence do fine. So mons that just outspeed Kyurem in general. So in terms of like Steel and Fairy type Pokemon that are counters, checks and counters, most of the Kyurem's partners are really good counters to it, like Celesteela, Mega Scizor, Jirachi, Valiant, Kartana, Ferrothorn, Megagron, Excadrill, Bronzong, and Metagross. I think the ones that deserve special mentions are Jirachi, Bronzong, Metagross, and Scizor, since they can just check Kyurem very well. Since they can have like relatively high special defense and can just eat up a hit and just retaliate back with their stab options or replenish off the damage. So. Or just wall it completely, so yeah. Some of these steel types do have to worry about switching into something like a Focus Blast or Fire HP Fire, so you gotta keep in mind on that. Then you have dedicated like offensive fairy type Pokemon like Mega Diancie, Mega Gardevoir, Azumarill, Mimikyu, and Primarina that just do very well against Kyurem. They just switch in and some of them, like I think Primarina and Azu can switch in and take a hit, while Gardevoir and Diancie can strengthen it offensively. And lastly, you have the bottom Pokemon like Clefable, Forgeous, Sylveon. They can just switch pass, just take on Kyurem and just call Mine in space. And as well as Tapu Fini has a great typing, and Klefki can actually wall it if it has Magnet Rise. So yeah, most of these fairy types can just check or wall Kyurem in general. So yeah, just like the steels. Other Pokemon you have to be worried about with Kyurem, usually facing with Kyurem are like mons like Snorlax, Mew, Umbreon. Like Mew and Umbreon like deserve a special mention because like Kyurem can't really toxic these two because actually they have access to Synchronize and just they pretty much toxic Kyurem back, so that's something they don't want to deal with. So Snorlax can really counter Kyurem well with its massive special defense and attack stat and just and fight off Kyurem as well, so it can just curse in its face and just like hit back and hard. So it has to worry about being PP stalled, but normally it has enough like options to like avoid that scenario. So then you have Pokemon like Suicune and Slowking, who are great water type Pokemon in general that can switch into Kyurem and can deal with it. Even like if they take a talk to Kyurem in general, they could like actually wall it and just wear it down. So, but they have to keep in mind that like defensive Kyurem sets can still be problematic, as most of these sets are. Cresselia, Porygon 2 can take hits from Kyurem, especially from like if it's scarfed or not. So Alolan Mud can do work as well. So especially with access to Recycle if it's especially defensive. But keep in mind that Kyurem does have access to Earth Power, so a Ground EMZ Earth Power could just knock it out. So you gotta be careful with that. Then you have mons like Jellicent, Toxapex, Mantine. Again, really good counters to Kyurem. Takes most specialty hits very nicely. So, but they can't hit it back in return. So they kind of need something like Toxic. So, like I said, like a subtoxic Kyurem set could just beat these mons down, except for maybe Toxapex. So Then you have mons like Uxie, like Chansey, and Blissey that are really nice. That can wall most like any Kyurem special Kyurem set bar substitute. So you gotta be very careful with that. So then lastly, you have revenge killers like Tapu Koko, Kartana, Gallade, Megarivore, like the mons that we already mentioned or talked about. Like these are mons that like have low base like 95 speeds in general, and just outspeed and just can either knock out Kyurem or like set up on it like Volcarona and like Lolan Ninetales and Manaphy. They could just set up their respective thing. So then like these mons could just like either pressure Kyurem to like switch out, pun not intended, but like so yeah. So in terms of the verdict and how good is Kyurem in Draft League, I would say Kyurem could be a great mid-tier Pokemon draft in the format if supported properly, because that's really much the key here. Like Kyurem like has all the stats and basically at the base stats, the moveset, and like even like the ability can like surface it very well. It just depends on how you use the Pokemon in general. Like more often than not, you're probably gonna run an offensive set, but it has great defensive potential as well, which like you have to consider both of them as well. So it has multiple. I already mentioned it has multiple weaknesses, like as I mentioned here, but like it can be like tailored around. Like Kyurem can be very tailored around to like beat its would-be counters. Like let's say like Chansey, you could just sub-toxic it down. Of course, Chansey still has access to heal build, but you're wasting its heal builds as well. So, and like Suicune, like if it gets toxic first, then Kyurem has his heal build user, then it's gonna wall like Suicune as well. So, so that's the thing. Like Kyurem can work very well both offensively and defensively. Like even like if a Sylveon tries to switch into like a Specs Ice Beam or Flash Cannon, it's not gonna take it very well. So, that's the thing about Kyurem. So you have to use its potential very nicely. You have to figure out when you're going to run an offensive or defensive sets, when it's the right time to run it, or if it's even good at all to like use. So it's because obviously it has many weaknesses, but even then it has a great special attack stat. It has a great special attack move pool in general. So great stat distribution, usable move pool just to like abuse almost any like special like attacking like potential it has. So yeah, I would say in terms of drafting it, I would say if you're gonna get like a mid-tier dragon type Pokemon or even an ice type, you may want to consider Kyurem, especially if it's like in below C tier, because I've seen like leagues that like have Kyurem in C tier, which is kind of insane, and that could be a steal if you ask me. Now, most of the time you might see it in B or C, or even like somewhere in between that. Like somewhere in like intermediate range where it's like you're starting to see like some of the good Pokemon in general. So like that's the thing about Kyurem. Like it's a great Pokemon overall. It's just that it can be checked relatively easily. Like so yeah. Like overall I'd say it's a great Pokemon to draft in like Draft League. You just gotta be mindful of like the Pokemon like you're facing. So so that is it of Kyurem. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, as I will be discussing another legendary Pokemon for next week. So, if you want, like, leave a like, comment, subscribe, or any criticisms you want to say, or any points I missed out on Kyurem. So, with that being said, I'll see you guys later. So, peace.